A question that frequently arises at this point has to do with God's infinite characteristics. If there's no such thing as an actual infinite, then how could God be infinitely good or loving? When we speak of God's infinite characteristics, we are speaking in more of a metaphorical manner. We don't mean that God has an infinitely large quantity of goodness and love with which he funds his grace and mercy. We mean he is the ultimate embodiment of goodness and love. These characteristics are without measure and speak to the quality of his character, not the quantity of his characteristics. But philosophical arguments are not the only kinds of arguments that demonstrate the universe had a beginning. There are scientific arguments as well. The second law of thermodynamics, for example, is often used as an illustration. However, the best and most easily understood example may be the Big Bang theory. In the 1920s, astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that our universe was bigger than previously thought. In fact, it was much bigger. Until he saw outside our galaxy, the prevailing thought was that our galaxy was the entire universe. Hubble was the first to recognize that ours was only one of a vast amount of galaxies. While he was studying light from distant galaxies, he found it was not what he expected it to be like. He noticed that the light was uniformly shifted to the red side of the spectrum. This phenomenon became known as the red shift. Hubble found an explanation for the red shift by applying the Doppler effect. The Doppler effect says that if sound or light waves are emitted from an object moving toward you, the waves are compressed or shortened. In the case of sound, the shortening of the wavelength increases the sound's pitch. The farther away the object is as it moves towards you, the shorter the wavelength and the higher the pitch. As the object is moving away from you, the sound waves are lengthened and the pitch shifts lower. The Doppler effect is what describes the change in pitch you hear in sirens from ambulances. As the ambulance gets closer to you, the sound you hear drops towards its natural pitch, and as the ambulance gets farther away, the siren drops progressively lower than its natural pitch. Hubble applied the Doppler effect to the light waves he was studying. The blue end of the spectrum is composed of the shorter wavelengths, while the red end is composed of the longer ones. Everywhere he looked in the universe, he saw a shift in the light towards the red end of the spectrum. This meant the stars emitting the light are all moving away from each other. Thus, the universe is expanding. Other scientists took this discovery and built on it. If the universe is expanding, it must have had a beginning, a point of origin from which it was expanding. Other discoveries were made that show the expansion is slower now than it was when it began, like an explosion. This explosion became known as the Big Bang, the beginning of the universe. The two primary challengers of the Big Bang theory are the steady-state theory and the oscillating theory. The steady-state theory argues the universe has always existed and always will exist. There are two problems with this. It doesn't account for the observations that support the Big Bang, and it would require the existence of actual infinites. The fact that there is a now makes the theory of an infinite number of preceding moments an impossibility. The oscillating theory says that the universe will eventually stop expanding and contract back to a singularity, which will then explode and continue a cycle that will repeat forever. The problem is a cycle of oscillations without beginning or end would require the existence of actual infinites. But since we exist in the current oscillation, there must be a start to the cycle. The other problem is the second law of thermodynamics. The energy in the universe is not infinite. Just as a rubber ball bounces lower and faster with each bounce until it stops, an oscillating universe would eventually run down. Again, an oscillating universe must have a beginning. The Big Bang remains the best explanation for the current state of the universe. But if the Big Bang was an explosion, why did it explode? What exploded, and where did it come from? Explosions are effects, and effects need causes. They don't cause themselves. The cause of the Big Bang is not to be found in the physical universe because that's precisely what exploded. Also, the matter that exploded didn't create itself. The non-existence of actual infinites shows that matter cannot be eternal. So, because the universe had a beginning, something must have initiated it. It did not start itself. The cause of the universe must be found outside of the universe. It must be transcendent. The cause must be powerful in order to create the universe out of nothing. The cause must not be an effect because it's an uncaused cause. And this cause must not rely on anything else for its existence. It must be non-contingent or necessary. Note that this only describes what's necessary for the Big Bang to work. But if there is such an entity as the one described, it's still not sufficient for the creation of the universe. Just because this entity does exist doesn't mean that the universe must exist. Something is still missing: intentionality, a will to make it happen. A car that has a working engine, a healthy battery, a properly connected electrical system to start the engine, and is full of gas has all the necessary conditions for running. Yet parking lots are full of cars that have the necessary conditions to run but aren't running. Although they have the necessary conditions, they lack sufficient conditions. Cars that are moving down the street have the necessary and sufficient conditions for running. That's why they're moving. What do the moving cars have that the parked cars don't? They have drivers. And what's a driver? It's a personal being that can act on their will. Thus, the universe needs a driver, a personal, intelligent agent that can choose whether to create the universe or not. This necessary and sufficient cause of the universe is what we call God. It's important to be honest about what the cosmological argument does and does not prove. It does not show that the God of the Bible is the one true God. Remember, this argument is also used in Islamic apologetics. However, the God of the Bible is consistent with the picture of God the cosmological argument describes. If our case for Christianity relied only on the cosmological argument, it would fail. But when we use it in conjunction with other arguments, it is a powerful component of a persuasive case.